Welcome to the stay-at-home lecture. It's been a couple of months since we had one of these, so I'm glad to welcome everyone back tonight. Hope everyone is dry and safe tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about a new project of the Historical Research Center. So I'm really excited about that. Trying to get my video back up. There it is. And as you know, these stay-at-home lectures are sponsored by the Historical Research Center and the Society for the History of Medicine and the Health Professions, which is the friends organization for the Historical Research Center. Now, the Historical Research Center is the archives division of UAMS. And so we collect the institutional record of UAMS, but also the history of medicine and the health professions throughout Arkansas. And we're located in the UAMS library on the 5th floor. If you're interested in coming by for a tour, I'd love for you to do that and show you some of the artifacts and materials that we have in our collection. And the society, as I mentioned, is the friends organization for the Historical Research Center. And it is a relatively inexpensive to join organization. In addition to programming like this, the society also sponsors an annual dinner where we have a speaker and we have a nice dinner where we're able to interact with each other and visit. Now, we haven't done that in the past few years because of COVID, but I think we're going to be able to do that this year. We're looking at probably having it in the fall, so you'll get more information about that if you're interested in attending that. And while we're on the subject of the society, I'd like to encourage you to join the society if you're not a member. As I mentioned, it's an inexpensive dues. It's $15 for an individual, $5 if you're a student, and you don't have to be a student at UAMS. You can be a student anywhere, a high school student, University of Arkansas student, or you can even be out of state if you'd like to join the society. The web link is on your page right there. Hopefully it's not covered up by the video. I'm gonna move that down a little bit. But you can also just bypass that website if you'd like and just go straight to paypal.me/shmhp if you'd like to just pay your dues that way. That makes it a little bit easier. As I mentioned, these stay-at-home lectures, I don't think I actually did mention that. These are held every month on the first Thursday of every month from 7 to 8. And they focus on different aspects of history of medicine in Arkansas. Before, we've had presentations on African Americans in health professions, and just a variety of presentations. Sorry, excuse me. And these are recorded, and after every presentation, they are placed up on the society's YouTube channel. And so if you go to YouTube and you type in SHMHP, you will find all the videos from this series going all the way back to March of 2020. In addition, you'll also find some recordings from other programming that has been sponsored by the Society or the Historical Research Center, including the panel discussion that the Society and the Historical Research Center co-sponsored back in December about the 50th, or about the founding of the Little Rock Internal Medicine Clinic. It's founded in 1970 as the first integrated medical practice in Arkansas. So if you're interested in that panel discussion, that is up on the YouTube channel as well. Next month, I hope you'll Danielle Afsorda, I think I got that right, Afsorda, will be speaking on Dr. Fred T. Jones, who was an African-American doctor in the 1920s and 30s, and really had a big impact on the healthcare in Arkansas. So I hope you'll be able to join us on April 6th for Danielle's presentation on Dr. Fred T. Jones. Then tonight, I'm really pleased to welcome Geoffery Stark as our presenter. Geoffery is our digital archivist at the Historical Research Center. He's been at the Historical Research Center for about a year. Prior to that, he was at the University of Arkansas Special Collections for about 20 years, most recently as the research room supervisor. Did I get that right, Geoffery? You're muted right now, Geoffery.
Okay. Yeah, you got it right.
I got it right. Okay, good. I don't get things right when I do bios. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Geoffery can share his, and then I'm going to turn off my video and audio and let Geoffery take over. So Geoffery, it's all yours.
All righty. Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are going to take an early look at a new digital project that the Historic Research Center is releasing toward the end of this month. It's the Pioneers of Diversity, Arkansas Women of Color in Public Health and Medicine. I'm Geoffery Stark. I'm the digital archivist at the Historical Research Center, and I'd like to talk about our ideas behind the project, its scope, and how we'd like to see the project grow. I also want to show you some of the interesting features that we have been developing along the way. Let me just want to share the title screen. Hold on for a second. There we go. So the Pioneers of Diversity, Arkansas Women of Color in Public Health and Medicine is an educational project to increase the visibility and representation of marginalized women in the field of medicine. It is our goal that people can learn about the diverse backgrounds, experiences, and achievements of women of color in Arkansas and gain a better understanding of their role in the history of medicine throughout the state. Our hope for the project is that it might encourage those who may feel underrepresented or disadvantaged in the medical field by relating both the challenges and triumphs that marginalized women have endured pursuing a medical profession. Included are images, documents, and video of successful women who are either native to Arkansas or whose medical careers have significantly impacted communities within the state. This is an ongoing digital project that includes entries of women practitioners both in the distant past and present. The Historic Research Center celebrates the accomplishments of women of color and seeks to bring their amazing stories and careers to a wider community. This project is built with Collection Builder, which is an open source tool for creating digital collections and websites. It was developed by faculty librarians at the University of Idaho Library. They developed this platform around the time of the COVID lockdown, so it's still relatively new. For this project, we saw merit using this particular digital platform because of how those librarians had rethought and approached the digital infrastructure in libraries to recenter technological choices around sustainable, pragmatic, and minimalist approaches. We very much wanted our patrons to have the ability to interact with the data in a manner that promotes discovery. I think that while Collection Builder is a simple and direct interface, you're going to find that it offers a lot of different ways to explore our content. Now I'd like to walk you through some of its functions and talk about some of the people and topics that you will find in this project. So here at the top, you can see that there's this basically a navigation bar with a lot of the main functions that you'll be able to access really from the first page. Along the side of the page, you're going to see these are useful keyword searches. typically composed of the most popular searches that are done through the search bar. And these will show as shortcuts just here along the side. And in the center here, we have a randomized previews of select images from the collection, which you can select at any point. These keywords of subjects, institutions, and locations correspond directly with the information associated with each entry. For example, let's take a typical entry. Here's an entry for Nurse Maud Hines. There we go. So on our browser image, you're going to see a title at the top for the entry. This one is, Maud Hines in Red Cross uniform, 1918. There will be an accompanying description that relays contextual information about the person, as well as how their contribution impact the medical history of Arkansas or in other parts of the country. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of information about Maud Hines' career. It's something that I'm still looking for. But we do know, we have contextualized into broader trends in the medical field of that particular period. Because this image is a part of material history for the mobilization of Black women in the Red Cross. At the outset of World War I, many women, including women of color, sought inclusion in the U.S. Army Nurse Corps to serve in the war effort. Some did so due to patriotic fervor, while others wished to demonstrate that they were loyal Americans who deserved the full benefits of citizenship. They faced exceptional barriers due to societal views on sex and race. It was not until July 1918 that women of color were included as reserve nurses in the American Red Cross. They were allowed to contribute strictly as reserve in case of emergency. That crisis occurred in October of 1918 with the outbreak of the Spanish influenza. And I believe there's a stay-at-home lecture given last year by Jerry Hogan on Spanish influenza. In the face of pandemic, Black nurses were badly needed to tend to the sick, and Maud Hines was one of such nurses who was deployed to combat the viral outbreak at Camp Pike in Little Rock, Arkansas. We try to fill out the information for the entries with as much data as we're able to obtain. So you can see down here that we have Camp Pike and Spanish influenza are listed here in our subject fields. And these are potential broader categories for researchers to search when they're looking through the collection. For institutions, we have the American Red Cross and location is Little Rock, Arkansas. These are both categories that researchers can look for women of color with similar backgrounds. In addition, having locations allows us to interact with the information geographically. By looking under this image, you're going to see that there are several functions that allow us to organize and present the digital entries a little bit differently. So for now, we're going to view this on the map, which allows us to see the image transposed on an area where the person had a professional impact. I believe this image should be Camp Pike in Little Rock, Arkansas. And then I can zoom out with the mouse to see broader areas throughout the state where women of color had careers and impacts. So see if I go out so much, you can see other places in Little Rock here in Conway where there'll be women of color. Having multiple images of a person allows us to select additional areas that were important to their careers, which can be medical schools or areas where they had long had a connection to a community. We're interested in places that, where maybe they had served as doctors or nurses, or even their hometown would be a good place to put them on a map when we have multiple images. And I'm going to go to timeline here. Now looking at this top bar, you can see I still have my same options here at the top. And when I go to timeline, you can see that Maud Hines is one of the earliest pictures that we have in our collection so far. This gives patrons a way to browse different eras that they might be interested in. The qualifier is whatever image we have needs to have an exact or an approximate date. I'm going to use the timeline to make another selection. I think we're going to look at the 1930s. Lydia Gertrudis Songendaris is an interesting person to check out. So one of the great things about working on this project is the hidden history that can be discovered once you start adding people's stories and their impact on communities. Also, that Arkansas has a vibrant legacy in progressing medicine, not only here, but around the world. Lydia Gertrudis Songendaris was enrolled in the University of Arkansas School of Medicine in the early 1930s. She was a citizen of the Republic of Panama and sought to be, she was really seeking to be enrolled in medical school at that time when women were only beginning to just then have access to higher education. An organization called the Pan American Union was her sponsor. It was an international organization devoted to strengthening government and cultural ties in the Americas. It is unclear if Arkansas was their first choice, but happily Lydia Songendaris arrived here around 1932. In 1934, Songendaris was the first Latin American graduate of the University of Arkansas School of Medicine. She completed her residency at the Women's Hospital in Philadelphia, where she specialized in the fields of obstetrics and gynecology. Returning to Panama, Dr. Songendaris joined the medical staff at St. Thomas Hospital and gradually rose to the position of Chief of Obstetrics and Gynecology. She became known as the first female doctor both in Panama and Central America. She specialized in family planning and responsible parenthood. And over the course of her career, Dr. Songendaris published several leading gynecological studies and was affiliated with an assortment of professional organizations, many of which she was the first female member to be accepted. Here she is as president of the National Medical Association from 1955 to 1957. And you can see the institutions and associations that she was associated with right here. Dr. Lydia Songendaris was co-founder and first female member of the Panamanian Academy of Medicine and Surgery. She was a co-founder and the first president of the Panamanian Society of Obstetrics and Gynecology, a member of the Pan American Alliance of Medical Women, the Isthmian Medical Association of the Canal Zone, and the Women Medical Association. So one of the ways is to tackle this is if you know a person, you can basically, use your search engine, you can go straight to them, If you know if it's a broader topic, which we'll look at here in a second, you can use these subject files to go straight to larger topics, and that's going to introduce you to people as well. Let's go ahead and try one of the top. We'll try midwifery here. Okay, so this is what this would look like if you go to one of these subject topics and you get a broad range of people. The subject keywords, and we picked midwifery. The subject keywords are headings selected from a thesaurus of library subject headings that are organized into a controlled vocabulary. For this project, we use the medical subject headings produced by the National Library of Medicine it's just called MESH for short. Think of the headings as helpful shortcuts that will allow you to quickly sort through a lot of the entries to people and topics that are of specific interest to your research. In developing our database, some thought has gone into anticipating larger topics of interest. like midwives, midwifery. Early midwives were specially trained to assist women in childbirth and were often called upon to deliver babies in place of a doctor. Traditionally, Arkansas midwives learned their trade from another practicing midwife. Quite often, it was a family member, and the profession was passed down. After childbirth, a midwife might be called upon to take care of the newborn and see to the well-being of the new mother. So you could see that midwives were and remain today vital caregivers in a community. I'm going to choose. Here is an image of midwives training at Felix School in Marion, Arkansas, in Crittenden County. In Collection Builder, we also have documents that you can view as a PDF. So this here is, click on it, you can see the image, and it blows it up. You can download it from the same page. Let's pull it up like so for a second. In the 1920s, under the Shepard-Towner program, the Arkansas Department of Health began issuing permits to those midwives who attended classes where they were required to pass exams to become licensed midwives. And you see that's what's going on in this picture right here. They're basically training sessions to get registered as midwife. All right. This is a photograph of Arkansas midwives in Dumas, Arkansas, in Deshay County. It was taken in 1929 by the Arkansas Department of Health. The department arranged these events so that they could train and register midwives. So what you can see that these ladies here, and this is a very early one in 1928, you can see that that they're gathered with their medical bags here. Those bags contain all they needed to make a house call. The midwife might be expected to have soap, clean towels or cloth, bowls, maybe an apron, scissors to cut the umbilical cord, scales to weigh the baby, silver nitrate, or even some herbal concoctions. And they also carried along some birth certificate forms. We have another good image of midwife with her medical bag. This is Benny Mama McGuire, who was originally from Hardin County, Tennessee. Benny McGuire moved to Arkansas and moved to Mark Tree, Arkansas in 1914. As a midwife, she made quite an impact on that community and was affectionately called Mama McGuire because she was said to have delivered over 1,000 babies during her lifetime. On reflecting on her life, McGuire said, "Most of the ones I went to were broke and in trouble. They couldn't afford to pay $300 to have their babies born in a hospital. I couldn't turn my back on them. I swore an oath when I became a midwife that I'd help the ones that needed it, and that's what I'd done." In this image, you see Benny McGuire with her medical bag, and she is certainly out to make an appointment. Mammy Odessa Hale is a remarkable person. Let me put her up here. Exceptional person in the training of midwives. She was exceptional. She was a nurse educator in the state, which is one of our headings that you'll find. Odessa Hale was originally from Kenny's Creek, West Virginia, and she actually began her medical education there. Prior to moving to Arkansas, she was part of the Works Progress Administration County Health Unit in Fayette County, West Virginia. And through the WPA, she got an opportunity to complete midwife training at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. She moved to Arkansas around 1942. where she helped local nurses administer midwife educational programs from the Crittenden County Health Department. By 1945, she was appointed as midwife consultant by the Arkansas Department of Health. She was based in Little Rock, but traveled out to quite a few rural counties where she was responsible for training midwives across the state. Since at that time, midwifery was a practice that was passed down, she was tasked with introducing new techniques and creating a little bit of uniformity in midwife practices. Some of the challenges she faced was that she needed to teach and help the midwives pass written exams for their license, when it really wasn't common for women in rural communities to all know how to read. So education was not as widely available for people out in the country, and women of color had additional barriers to obtaining basic education. From 1945 to 1950, Mamie Hale started midwife programs throughout Conway, Faulkner, Lone Oak, and St. Francis counties, which we have listed among locations. Later in life, Odessa Hale moved to Pittsburgh, where she became a hospital administrator and really lived the rest of her life there. Some of the material that we really want to add to this collection are images and documents that record her later career in Pittsburgh. Presently, it doesn't look like she is as well remembered in Pittsburgh as she is here in Arkansas. But any additional information and certainly any pictures is going to be very helpful to us. By the way, both the topics of midwives and Mamie Hale are covered by our own Suzanne Easley for Stories in the Archives. Let me pull that up real quick. And you could see here that we could host video so that, you could go to YouTube and find it, but you could also come to you can come to this digital project and find it as well. So when you're searching through here, you should be able to also find quite a bit of varying content. I think a person who has a remarkable story is Lena Jordan. Her. She moved to Arkansas from Georgia in the 1920s. She became affiliated with the Arkansas Home and Hospital that took care of crippled Black children, and was really the only charitable institution in Little Rock that provided care for Black families. The hospital operated under a very small budget that was barely able to survive. When the financial problems came to be too much in 1936, Lena Jordan placed a mortgage on her own home to keep the hospital in operation. The hospital was subsequently renamed the Lena Jordan Hospital. Her hospital was a 20-bed facility equipped with general surgery, medical and obstetric care. It was open to all Black patients regardless of ability to pay. She even instituted a program to train nurses by providing young women valuable work experience at her hospital, with which they could obtain a practical nursing certificate for their service. When we look at the career of Lena Jordan in the subjects, you can see that she was a nurse educator, a midwife, and a hospital administrator. But my favorite is philanthropist, because Lena Jordan gave everything she had back to her community. And if I pick some philanthropists among the subject files, you'll see a more recent practitioner has followed a similar career. This is Charlotte Tidwell, who is a longtime resident of Fort Smith, Arkansas. She was the first Black woman to complete the nursing program at Sparks Hospital in her community. And she was hired back to work at Sparks Hospital, where she had a long career as a nurse and later as a hospital administrator, of which she had become a director of the nurses. One day, and I think she was still working at Sparks Hospital at the time, Charlotte decided to open 2 free daycare centers for working women, which she funded through her own savings. After about a year, her savings were pretty much depleted, and she decided to take on another job. She began working at a company where she was in charge of developing educational materials for nursing homes, which she took up this work specifically to keep those centers open. And after she finally retired from that position, she just continued to give back to her community. In 2000, she founded Antioch for Youth and Family. It is a nonprofit that primarily is known as the biggest food pantry in Sebastian County, Arkansas. It distributed over 3 million pounds of food in 2020. Antioch for Youth and Family also offers innovative programs to improve family nutrition, mentor at-risk youths, and to improve elderly care. Her organization was serving 7,000 people a month in 2015, and now has grown to as many as 30,000 people. Like Lena Jordan's hospital, Tidwell's nonprofit does a great deal of work without having paid staff. For over 20 years, Charlotte Tidwell was mostly self-funding operations from her pension, choosing a simpler life so that she could provide for residents of Fort Smith and Sebastian County. So we have talked about some people. I think I want to talk about historical events that kind of show up in some of the topics that we're looking at. Here we go. In this photograph, a woman in United States Cadet Corps uniform sits in a garden at the Rohr relocation camp following the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. President Franklin Roosevelt established the War Relocation Authority for the relocation, maintenance, and supervision of the Japanese American population. I think we today do not like that citizens were held in camps. And remember, there were two main camps in Arkansas. There was Rohr and Jerome. Though incarcerated, these women still sought to help the war effort in their community by serving as nurses. Here's a photograph in the camp of a nurse midwife caring for a baby. According to registration records, of the 120,000 Japanese Americans interned in the camps, some 130 were registered nurses and 70 were registered midwives. So that is quite a few people that we'd love to know more about and hopefully add to our project. By the 1970s, there is another relocation story that I do not think that a lot of people know about. Let me all right. This is Min Van Nguyen, who was a participant in the Vietnamese physician education program at UAMS in the late 1970s. As a graduate of that program, she provided a year of medical service to Des Arc, Arkansas. At the end of the Vietnam War, many South Vietnamese refugees were evacuated to the United States and housed for a time at Fort Chaffee in Arkansas. In consultation with the University of Saigon Medical School, the University of Arkansas College of Medicine accepted Vietnamese graduates with verifiable knowledge and skills in medical subjects to enter into a state-sponsored program. Funded by Governor David Pryor and by federal grants, the Vietnamese physician education program opened the way for the refugee physicians to engage in training programs to achieve a medical license to practice within the United States. A requirement of the program was that upon attaining their residency and medical license, the doctors would enter into a private practice of medicine in the various small country communities in Arkansas that were in need of medical professionals. This did not end up working quite as well as imagined, particularly because the funding ran out. There was also some early problems with overcoming language barriers. Gradually, the doctors from this program eventually did spread out all over the country, some of them practicing, some of them actually ended up practicing medicine. The program shifted from service in the rural communities to the doctors paying UAMS back once they were able to start seeing patients. The Vietnamese physician education program is very interesting and will most likely be a future from the archives presentation. Lastly, I'd like to show you a selection of some of the professional women from UAMS. While we are seeking images for this project from all over the state, there are quite a few photographs that are part of our own repository, our own archive. I've been struck with just how many people have had a career at UAMS or began their education here and became luminaries at other medical practices across the country. Two seminal figures, of course, are Dr. Edith Irby Jones and Dr. Joycelyn Elders. Here's a picture of Dr. Jones. She was the first African-American to be accepted as a non-segregated student at UAMS and the first Black student to attend racially mixed classes in the American South. Dr. Jones was the first African-American to graduate from a Southern medical school, first Black intern in the state of Arkansas, and later to the first Black intern at Baylor College of Medicine. In 1985, Edith Irby Jones became the first Black woman to be president of the National Medical Association. In addition to her distinguished medical career, she was an activist for civil rights, working with Dr. Martin Luther King and being a part of the Freedom Four. I think one of the interesting aspects of Dr. Jones' work in Houston, Texas, was that she was involved in comparative medicine. Along with Baylor University, she would take classes to Cuba at a time when the United States was not as friendly. And they would explore the differences in medical practice and treatments. We even have a photograph of her meeting Fidel Castro, truly an interesting and remarkable person. Here is a picture of Dr. Elders. There we go. This is one of her faculty photos. Dr. Joycelyn Elders was born in Shaw, Arkansas in Howard County, and a longtime member of UAMS faculty. She graduated from UAMS in 1962, specializing in pediatric endocrinology. At the time, she was the first pediatric endocrinologist in the state and was an expert on the topics of childhood, sexual development, and juvenile diabetes. In 1987, Dr. Joycelyn Elders became the first Black woman to head the Arkansas Department of Health. It was a position that she held for 6 years, and during that time, she partnered with Betty Bumpers and Rosalind Carter to see that every Arkansas child was immunized in the state. In 1993, Dr. Elders became the first African-American woman to be appointed to Surgeon General of the U.S. Public Health Service. A lifetime of service, Joycelyn faced throughout her career the challenges of the onset of HIV/AIDS disease and the highest rate of teen pregnancy in the industrialized world. She steadfastly sought to raise the awareness of sexual education and successfully reduce the rate of teenage pregnancies. Both Dr. Jones and Elders have made a huge impact on UAMS in the state of Arkansas. Both have dedicated collections and will have dedicated digital projects. However, you will find that they are both well represented in the Pioneers of Diversity project. Florence Char was born in Peking, China, sometime in the early 1940s. Her parents sent her and her brother to live in the Western United States. Dr. Char earned her medical degree at the State University of New York Health Science Center in Brooklyn in 1952. She interned in pediatrics at the University of Minnesota Hospital from 1952 to 1953 and was a fellow in pediatric cardiology the following year. Then she joined the faculty at the University of Arkansas School of Medicine in 1963. Dr. Char was a longtime professor here at UAMS in the Department of Pediatrics, around the same time that Dr. Elders was there. She seems to have had a quiet demeanor and was very respected by students and colleagues. In 1971, Florence Char established the first genetics clinic and cytogenetics laboratory in Arkansas and was instrumental in the creation of the Arkansas Genetics Program at UAMS. During the course of her research at this university, Dr. Char discovered and documented a unique genetic birth defect in children that is now called Char syndrome after her. She retired from UAMS in 1990. This is Dr. Ethel Lamar Moore, who graduated from UAMS in 1983. Dr. Moore finished a 3-year residency in family practice in St. Louis and 2 years with an ambulatory care unit in St. Charles, Missouri. A lot of graduates from UAMS continue their education at St. Louis. It's a very common pattern that I've seen since working on this project. Anyway, at the conclusion of her education, Dr. Moore set out to pay off her student loan through the National Health Service Corps by providing her medical expertise on Indian reservations. In 1988, she set out for Montana and began her medical practice at the Rocky Boy Indian Reservation. Dr. Moore quickly became in high demand throughout the communities around Fort Belknap, where people have to often travel long distances to see a physician. She continues to make a very high impact on that community. Sophronia Reese Williams worked as a nurse and nurse educator for 46 years, specializing in mental health. Over the course of her long career in medicine, she was among the first African-American nurses to integrate hospitals in Missouri, Ohio, and Colorado. Sophronia is from Little Rock, Arkansas. As a teenager, she worked at St. Vincent Infirmary as a hospital aide. In 1952, she graduated as a registered nurse and worked at Homer G. Phillips Hospital for a year. By 1953, Sophronia began working at the Jefferson Barracks Veterans Affairs in Missouri, where she joined the psychiatric unit. She became one of 2 Black nurses to work there. In the mid-1950s, she transferred to the psychiatric unit at Veterans Affairs Hospital in St. Louis. She was one of the first 10 Black nurses to work there. She became a staff nurse, a head nurse, and then a supervisor. In 1979, Williams joined UAMS College of Nursing, where she worked with both adult and child mental health patients. She retired from UAMS in 1994 as an associate professor and is still enjoying her retirement. In a recent article on her career, Williams reflected, "I really cared. I do a lot of giving of myself to people. I did show I cared for them, treating them all as human beings." Lenora Newsom is from Smackover, Arkansas, and she too is a graduate of UAMS College of Pharmacy. During her career, she has experienced many changes in the practice of pharmacy, including the implementation of new technologies and how pharmacists have distilled medicine over the years. While practicing pharmacy in El Dorado, Arkansas, she helped True Quality Pharmaceuticals open their first pharmacy in the state of Arkansas. In 1991, Bill Clinton appointed Newsom to the Arkansas State Board of Pharmacy, and she has been reappointed by each successive governor. Lenore Newsom has served the state of Arkansas practicing pharmacy for over 40 years. Dr. Doris Ballard Ferguson was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, and over 22 years she was a certified geriatrics nurse practitioner and associate professor of UAMS. Later in her career, she moved to Tallahassee, Florida, where she became the graduate coordinator for their nursing program at Florida A&M. And she had a successful career as the associate dean of the nursing program. A common aspect of our institution pages, and I'm hoping that this section is useful to students, is for them to see how many institutions and associations that medical practitioners join over the course of their career. Also, how women of color have progressed in their chosen profession. Dr. Ballard Ferguson is now enjoying her retirement, and she's very well respected by the Tallahassee community. Dr. Frida McKenzie Bush was a native Arkansan who grew up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. In 1963, she attended UAMS and got her Bachelor of Science in Nursing. While at Columbia University, she became a certified nurse midwife. Afterwards, she completed her medical degree at the University of Mississippi Medical School. And since that time, Dr. McKenzie Bush has been a practicing gynecologist in Jackson, Mississippi, with a great deal of experience in addressing issues related to women's health and family planning. From 2006 to 2009, she served as a presidential appointee to the Presidential Advisor Council on HIV and AIDS. In 2012, Dr. McKenzie Bush became president and CEO of the Medical Institute for Sexual Health. She served as a medical advisor for Heartbeat International and CareNet, and she served as medical director for the Center for Pregnancy Choices in Metro Jackson, Mississippi. When Dr. McKenzie retired in 2017, the Mississippi legislature issued a resolution commending her distinguished career. And sadly, I learned that she passed away earlier this year. So as you can see, there's a lot of interesting people and stories that will be available to everyone later this month. Also, since this will be an ongoing project, there's a lot more work to be done. At the time that the Pioneers of Diversity project was being developed, the Historical Research Center team was composed of Tim Nutt, Suzanne Easley, Logan Whittington, April Hughes, and myself. Additional research was conducted by Nastasia Alderson and Devin Whiteside in partnership with the Honors College at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. Our project would be diminished without the participation of external contributors and repositories. To all our partners, we are deeply appreciative. It is the mission of the Historic Research Center to collect, preserve, and provide access to materials to the history of UAMS and the history of health sciences in Arkansas. As such, we seek additional materials for its collection, as well as artifacts that will help us document and share the state's rich history as it pertains to medical science. Our goal for the Pioneers of Diversity, Arkansas Women of Color in Public Health and Medicine, is that it will be a project that the community will embrace and help grow. If you would like to contribute an image, a document, or an audio video file, or if you'd just like to suggest an individual for our project, you could please contact me. And here is my number, and here's my email. If you have a collection that you'd like to donate to the Historical Research Center, please contact Tim Nutt. We'll be very pleased to hear from you, and we're grateful for your patronage. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoffrey. Appreciate that. I am going to, Geoffrey, I'm going to put the spotlight on you too. So we'll both be on the screen. And I invite you, if anyone has any questions or comments or suggestions for people to include in the project, please feel free to use the chat feature. Chat button should be at the bottom of your screen, or maybe it's at the top. But if anyone has any questions, and while we're waiting for people to write their questions, Geoffrey, I have a question for you about the use of GitHub as the software mechanism for it. Why did you choose that, and why did you recommend that as opposed to Content DM, which is what a lot of institutions use?
Well, originally when we looked at this digital platform, it had been developed for Content DM. It could merge, like all that I have right now, I can also put on our Content DM if, say, something were to happen with GitHub. But GitHub is very easy. It's easier to work with GitHub than it is to do this kind of graft on the Content DM. So that's why it's located on GitHub for right now. If we have any difficulties with GitHub, let's say, like right now, GitHub is honestly very stable because it's how programmers and software people collaborate. Like I could collaborate with someone on this project that, from all over the world, because they could get in GitHub and see what changes I've made and add. If that was something that we ended up doing, maybe working with other universities or repositories. But let's say none of that worked. I could take everything I have there and then graft it onto Content DM, and we could do that too. So there's a lot of versatility with it. And that's kind of why we selected it.
And we do have a question. Has the history of each photograph been preserved? So where, is it noted where the photographs came from? I'm assuming that's what you're asking, Dr. Davies.
Yes. I have a list of where each image came from, which repository, and most of it, thankfully, is from our repository, but we're in the process of adding some more content to the collection from around the state. I think for our launch, we're going to do a soft launch, probably of 50 images, so that we have some time to add some, to basically add additional material as we discover it.
And this is an ongoing project, as you mentioned. So, as we get new information, new suggestions about additional individuals, we'll be adding those to the project. This is our first phase, as you mentioned, with we'll launch later this year with 50, or later this month rather, with 50 images. And then probably later in the year, we'll add another 25, 50 images.
Well, and that includes information, because sometimes we find information out about a person, and then in a way that also could generate other search terms for that person. I know that in the case of Frida McKenzie Bush, she passed away earlier this year, tragically. But like when I was looking through her obit, I found all kinds of additional information to add to her entry. So things like that could prompt us. We're going to have to go back and work with entries as we know more about a person. For all I know, I'm hoping to find Maud Hines' career and see what things that happened to it, what she was involved in. That would be really interesting to me if anyone has that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if anyone has any information about more additional information than about the people that Geoffrey highlighted tonight, please feel free to contact him. Susan,
hey,
go ahead, Geoffrey.
I just saw a chat pop up. Was that the one you were about to read?
Yeah, I was about to read.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Susan asked, how are we getting the word out to the community to ask for photographs for the collection? We will be doing a press release in collaboration with the communications and marketing department at UAMS. We'll send that press release out through UAMS and its channels and the announcements and things like that. But then I also imagine that we'll send it out to different historical societies around the state and other libraries around the state as well. And at some point, Geoffrey, you and I have talked about you going around to different archives and looking in there in their collections. And that's some of the work that our 2 Honors College interns did at U of A. They were in Fayetteville while they were working on this project.
Mm-hmm.
So we've already started looking at images or looking for images and other information at U of A Fayetteville Special Collections. We have a question: have churches, hospitals, and social clubs been good sources of images, or family members been the main source of photos?
So they will be. They haven't been so far for our first 50, but those are like really, those are rich sources to find. I like sources when it's not obvious, it's not always immediately obvious what you're going to find, because that's when you find things that are kind of off the radar. We're hoping that as the collection comes out, families will come forward and say, you know what, I have an aunt who was a midwife. And, you know, look, she was an amazing lady. And the thing that will help me is when it's an image and some contextualization, because that's what we'll also add with this image. And we can then tell people a story of why this is important. And it doesn't have to be, you know, some people are just huge, you know, do things that you would think, oh, this isn't another Edith Irby Jones but that's not the way to look at it, because everyone is doing, like a tapestry, doing incredible work in whatever community that they're in. Like there are 2 people I could have added. There's Jessie Clemens, who came through and it has her career in Pine Bluff. Mm-hmm. And she was trying to retain nurses in Pine, because a lot of times it's hard to retain nurses in Arkansas in the more rural communities. And that's something that we've seen, like when I was talking about the Vietnamese physician educational program. But she was there trying to make programs that would retain nurses there at Pine Bluff. And, you know, things like that make a big impact and difference. And those are like the stories we want to be able to tell.
Yeah, and we started, you know, sort of piggybacking off what you just said, Geoffrey. We started with our collections at UAMS and the Historical Research Center as sort of the low-hanging fruit. And then since we had that collaboration with the Honors College at UA Fayetteville, we started mining those collections and special collections there. But we will eventually move out beyond that, beyond UAMS and Fayetteville, to other institutions, other archives, and then to social groups and churches and other institutions like that. Sam Taggart mentions that Maud Hines, we might find some information in the Lenny Beauchamp papers at UAMS, so we need to check on that, Geoffrey. And then Andrea says that she's going to check with Michael DeBricious, who's the former head of special collections at U of A. He's now in Pittsburgh, to see if there's any information in Pittsburgh about Mamie Odessa Hell. So that's good. That's what we want. We want people to help us with this project. And then Susan mentions that about looking at other collections in history of medicine collections in our surrounding states, and we will be doing that as well, Susan. So
yeah, I've learned that states, you know, collections don't observe political, you know, state boundaries. They travel. So absolutely.
And I want to emphasize again that, you know, the people in this collection, the people that we include in this collection, they don't have to have a connection to UAMS at all, really. Mm-hmm. It's just if they're involved in the public health and the health sciences at some point in Arkansas. You know, they may have stayed in Arkansas for 5 or 10 years and moved somewhere else. We want to include those people, and not just from the big cities, but also from the small towns. You mentioned someone from Smackover,
well,
County.
And that's what you're going to find. You're going to find a native-born Arkansans who moved, you know, who moved on from Arkansas and impacted other places in the country. And then you'll find another person like Benny McGuire, who came from Georgia and came into Arkansas and has made a huge impact. So you're going to find both of those things and a lot of interesting patterns.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Geoffrey. It's 8 o'clock, so we'll close for tonight. Thank you very much for that presentation. Thank you for all your hard work on this project. We're very excited about this project. We'll let you know when we have the opening of the collection. I'll be sending out an email to everyone, and like I said, we'll be sending out a press release as well. So thank you all for being here. If you'd like to watch this again, feel free to go to the YouTube channel. This recording will probably be up very soon after tonight, and hopefully we'll see you on April 6th for the next stay-at-home lecture. Thank you all. Thank you, Geoffrey, and y'all be safe and stay dry.